So, as soon as Abraham and his family, Abraham travels begin. Genesis chapter 12, 13. God talked to a man named Abraham. God said, "Leave this land, leave these people, leave your father's family, and I will show you a new land to live in. I'm going to give you a family. Your family will become a great nation, and your name will become great. I'll do good things for anyone who speaks well of you, and I'll send trouble to anyone who says bad things about you. Good will come to everyone on earth because of your family." Abraham was about 75 years old, but he did what God told him. He left for another land. His wife Sarah and his brother son's Lot went with him, and they took everything they had, and then they traveled to the land of Canaan. One day Abraham came to a big oak tree, and it was at a place called Moriah. "I will give this land to your family," God said. So Abraham piled up stones, and he built an altar near the big tree, and it was a place to worship God, and he built it because God had talked to him there. Then Abraham went south toward the hills, and he set up his tent. He built another altar and worshiped God there. But a time came when there was not enough food. Food would not grow, so Abraham traveled again, and he went to the land of Egypt. Before they got to Egypt, Abraham had talked to Sarah. "You are very beautiful," he said. "The men of Egypt will see you, and they may want you to be one of their wives. Then they will kill me, so tell them you are my sister. Then I will be safe." The men of Egypt did see Sarah, and some of them told the king how beautiful she was. And so the king took Sarah to his palace, and he was very nice to Abraham. And that's because Sarah was at his palace. Abraham got sheep and cows, donkeys and camels and servants. But God made the king sick, and God made all the people of the palace sick. The king called for Abraham. "What did you do?" he asked. "Why didn't you tell me Sarah was your wife? I was going to make her my wife. Now take your wife and go." So Abraham left with Sarah and Lot, and he took all the things he had gotten in Egypt, and he was rich with animals and silver and gold, and he traveled back to Bethel, and that's where he had set up his tent before, and then Abraham worshipped God there. Genesis chapter 13, Lot chooses his land. And so Lot was the son of Abraham's brother, and he had been traveling with Abraham, and he had been living where Abraham lived. And Lot also had many sheep and cows and tents. There wasn't enough land for both Abraham's family animals and Lot's animals. So Lot's servants took care of Lot's sheep and cows, and Abraham's servants took care of Abraham's sheep and cows. But Lot's servants began to fuss and fight with Abraham's servants. Abraham told Lot, "Let's not fuss and fight. Let's not allow our servants to fuss and fight. Don't we have all this land around us? Let's live in different places. You might want the land to the left of us, then I'll live in the land to our right," said Abraham. "Or choose the land to the right of us, then I'll live in the land to our left." So Lot looked around. He saw all the land around the Jordan River. It was good land. It had plenty of water. It was like a garden. So that's where Lot chose to live. He set up his tents near the city of Sodom. But the people in that city were sinful. They did many sinful things. Abraham went to live in Canaan. God told Abraham, "Look around you. Look north and south, and look east and west. I will give all this land to you and your family. It will be yours forever. Your family will be so big that it will be like dust. No one can count the dust, and no one will be able to count the people in your family. Walk through the land, I give it to you." So Abraham moved near the big oak trees at Hebron, and he set up his tents there, and he built an altar to God. So war, Genesis 14:15. Now 4 kings got their armies together, and they went to war against 5 other kings. And one of the 5 kings was the king of Sodom. And they all marched out to the Dead Sea Valley, and it was 4 kings against 5. The 4 kings were winning, and the men in the army of Sodom began to run away. But the valley was full of tar pits. Some men fell into the tar pits, and some men ran to the hills. And then the 4 kings went into the city of Sodom, and they took away everything they could find. They even took the food and some of the people. They took Lot and his family too. But one person got away, and he ran to Aram and told him what had happened. Aram got 318 men all together, and they were all good fighters, and they chased the armies of the 4 kings. Night came, and Aram put his men in different groups, and they fought the armies of the 4 kings. They saved Lot and his family and many other people, and they even saved the things that the army had taken. Then they started home. The king of Sodom met Aram in the king's valley. Another king met Aram too, and he was the king of Salem. He was a king who worshipped God, and he set out bread and wine for Aram. And when the king of Sodom prayed for Aram, he said, God Most High is the maker of heaven and earth. He gives his riches to Aram. So worship God Most High, and he saved you from your enemy. Aram took one of every 10 things he got from the war, and he gave that to the king of Sodom. The king of Sodom told Aram, just give me back my people, and you can keep everything else. No, said Aram, I promised God I wouldn't take anything that was yours. I won't even take a string, not even a tie from your shoe. I'll only take what my men ate. Sometime later, God told Aram, don't be afraid, I am your guard. Good things will come to you. Why give me anything? Asked Aram. I don't have any children. When I die, my servant will get everything I own. No, said God, that is not how it would be. You will have a son. Then God took Aram outside and looked up at the sky, and God said, count the stars if you can. That's how many people will be in your family someday. Aram believed God. That made everything right between Aram and God. And then Aram gave some animals to God as a gift. God was happy. Genesis 16, Sarah tries to get a son. So Aram and Sarah did not have any children, but Sarah had a servant, Hagar, named Hagar. So Sarah told Aram, take my servant to be another wife for you, and when she has a baby, it can be my baby. Aram did what Sarah asked, and he let Hagar be his wife too. One day Hagar found out she was going to have a baby, and then Hagar began to hate Sarah. Sarah told Abraham, you are the one to blame. I let Hagar be your other wife. Now she hates me. She is your servant, said Abraham. You can do whatever you want with her. From then on, Sarah was mean to Hagar, and so Hagar ran away. But God the angel found Hagar, and she was out in the desert by a road, and the road was near a place where water came out of the ground. Where did you come from, Hagar? Asked the angel. Where are you going? I'm running away from Sarah, said Hagar. The angel said, go back to her. Keep being with her servant. You will have children, and they will grow up and have children, and someday there will be many people in your family. No one will be able to count them. The angel also said, your baby will be a boy. Name him Ishmael, because God has heard how sad you are. Ishmael will be like a wild donkey, and he will fight with everyone. And then Hagar thought of a name for God, and she said, you are the God who sees me. Now I have seen the God who sees me. Hagar went back to Sarah, and she had a baby boy, and Aram named him Ishmael, and that was when Aram was 86 years old. Genesis 17. A new name. God came to Abraham. And again, when Abraham was 99 years old, God said, I am God Almighty. Do what is right. Abraham bowed, and he put his face toward the ground. And God said, you will not be called Abraham anymore. Now your name will be Abraham, father of many nations. Nations will come from your family. King will come from your family, and I promise to be your God forever, and I promise to be the God of your family, and I'll give you the land of Canaan. Then God said, Sarah's name will now be Sarah, and she will have a son, and she will be the mother of nations. Abraham laughed. Will I have a son after I'm 100 years old? Will Sarah have a baby after she is 90? Maybe you can do these good things for Ishmael instead. Sarah will have a son, said God. Name him Isaac. My promise is for him and his family forever. But I hear what you say about Ishmael, and I will do good things for him. He will have a big family too, but my promise is for Isaac. Genesis 18. Abraham's visitors. Abraham sat at the front of his tent near the trees, and it was the hot part of the day. Abraham looked up and saw their 3 men. So he got up and went to meet them. One of them was really God. Abraham bowed down and stayed for a while, and he said, Rest in the shade of the tree. My servants will get water so you can wash your feet. I'll get some food so you can eat, and you can go on after you rest. All right, the man said. Abraham rushed into the tent. Hurry, Sarah, he said, bake some bread. In a little while the food was ready. Abraham brought out milk and meat and bread, and he gave it to the men. And then he let them eat while he stood under a tree. Where is Sarah? Asked the men. She is in the tent, said Abraham. Then God said, Sarah will have a baby boy, and it will happen next year about this time. Sarah was in the tent near the door, and she was listening, and she laughed to herself when she heard what God said. That's because she and Abraham was very old. Why is Sarah laughing? Asked God. Is anything too hard for God? Sarah was scared, and she said, I didn't laugh. Yes, you did, said God. Sodom, Genesis chapter 18. So Abraham walked a little way with the men, and when they left, they could see the city of Sodom far away, and they stood and looked at the city. God said, There is very bad sin in Sodom. I'm going there to see how bad the people are. Then the 2 men walked toward Sodom, but God stayed there with Abraham. Abraham could tell that God was going to get rid of the bad people. You want to get rid of the good people, would you? Won't you save the city if 50 good people live there? I'll look for 50 good people there, said God. If I find 50, I'll save the city. I've been brave to talk to you about this, said Abraham. But what if you find only 45 good people? I'll look for 45 good people, said God. If I find 45, I'll save the city. But what if you find only 40 good people? Asked Abraham. For 40 good people, I'll save the city, said God. Don't be angry, said Abraham. But what if you find only 30? I'll save the city for 30 good people, said God. Since I've been so brave, I'll ask again, said Abraham. What if you find only 20? If I find 20, I'll save the city, said God. Please don't get mad, said Abraham. But what if you find only 10? And if I find 10, I'll save the city, said God. Then God left, and Abraham went back home. So those who put their faith in Christ are Abraham's descendants. Galatians chapter 3:7 understand that those who have faith are children of Abraham. In previous verses, Paul declared that Christ redeemed bought out of slavery all those under the curse of the law by becoming that curse himself. He paid the price of death and separation from God. What did that gain? He made it possible for even non-Jews, Gentiles, to become the children of Abraham by faith. It allowed them to receive the blessing that comes with the relationship. But can God's promises to Abraham and his descendants really be claimed by non-Jewish people all these centuries later? The Judaizers would apparently say no, perhaps claiming that the law of Moses took the place of God's promise to Abraham. Now Gentiles who wanted to be included in God's family must be circumcised and follow the law, or so they said. But Paul insists that a covenant cannot be revoked even by the agreements later on. God declared Abraham righteous, justified because of his faith. God made promises of great blessings to Abraham's offspring on the basis of that faith. And not Paul insists that offspring God was referring to was in fact the one man, Christ himself. Paul is not saying that the promises to Abraham were not for the rest of his descendants, but that the focus of those promises was one singular offspring, Jesus Christ. Jesus during his time on ministry was a fully human Jewish man, in addition to being fully God in human form. Matthew 1 tracks the genealogy of Abraham all the way to Jesus Christ was Abraham's descendant, and would become by God's covenant the focus of all of God's promises to Abraham. And Paul will go on to show then that all who are in Christ are included in those covenant promises as well. So, the angels in Sodom, Genesis 19. It was evening when the two men got to Sodom, and they were really angels. And Lot was sitting at the city gate, and he saw them coming. So he stood up and bowed. "Please come to my house," he said. "You may wash up and stay there tonight. In the morning you can go on your way." The angel said, "No, we will stay in the city street tonight." But Lot kept asking them to stay with him. So at last they went to Lot's house, and he broke bread and made dinner, and they ate with him. Before they went to bed, they heard voices. "Bring out the men who came to see you. We want to take them with us." But the men of the city were mean men. Lot went outside, and he closed the door to his house, and he saw all the men of the city around his house, and they were asking for Lot's visitors. But Lot said, "No, this is not right. You must not be mean to my visitors." The men said, "Get out of this way, or we'll be meaner to you than we are to them." And they kept pushing Lot, and they pushed toward the door, and so they could break it down. But the angels were inside, and they quickly opened the door, and they took hold of Lot, and they pulled him inside with them. And then the angels made the men outside lose their sight, and they could not find the door. The angels turned to Lot. Does anyone else in your family live in the city? If they do, tell them to leave. They said, God has sent us here to get rid of the city. Lot went to the men who were going to marry his daughters. God is going to get rid of the city, he told them, so hurry and leave. But the young man thought it was a joke, just a joke. And when the morning came, the angels told Lot, hurry and leave, or you'll be in the city when God wipes it away. Take your wife and daughters with you, now go. But Lot did not go. So the angels took him by the hand, and they took his wife's hand and his daughter's hands, and the angels led them out of the city. God was being good to them. They got out of the city, and then one of the angels said, run for your lives. Don't look behind you. Don't stop until you get to the mountains. But Lot said, no, please, you are very kind to save our lives. But I can't run all the way to the mountains. See the town of Zor over there? It's a very small town. Let me run to that town. So the angel said, all right, but hurry. I can't get rid of Sodom until you get there. The sun was up and when Lot got to Zor, and then God sent fire from heaven. Fire fell like rain on Sodom, so he got rid of the city and everyone in it. But Lot's wife looked back and she turned into a post made of salt. And the next morning, Abraham got up early and he went back to where he had talked with God, and he looked toward Sodom. He saw thick smoke going up from the land, and Lot was too scared to stay in Zoar. So he took his 2 daughters and moved to the mountains, and they lived there. So Abraham lies again, Genesis 20. So Abraham moved to Gerar for a while, and he told the people there that his wife Sarah was his sister. And so the king brought Sarah to his palace, and he planned to make her his wife. But God came to the king one night in a dream, and God said to the king, you're in big trouble, Sarah, and Sarah is already married. Abraham told me she was his sister, said the king. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. I know, said God. Now give me Sarah back to Abraham. If you don't, you and your family will die. The king called his leaders together early the next morning, and he told them about his dream, and they were very scared. And then the king called for Abraham. Why did you do this to me? Asked the king. I thought you would kill me, said Abraham. That way you could have Sarah to be your wife. And then the king gave Abraham sheep and cows and servants, and he gave Sarah back to Abraham too. The king said, live wherever you want to live in my land. Then the king spoke to Sarah. I was wrong to bring you to my palace, he said. So I will give 1,000 of silver to Abraham. This will make up for the wrong I did. He apologized even though he didn't realize. Two sons, Genesis 21. God kept his promises to Sarah, and she and Abraham had a son, even though they were old. The baby came just when God said it would. Abraham named the baby Isaac. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. God has let me laugh, said Sarah. Anyone who hears about this will laugh and be happy too. Who would have thought Abraham and I would have a child? But I had a baby boy for Abraham. And one day Abraham had a party for Isaac, but Ishmael, Hagar's son, made fun of Isaac. So Sarah told Abraham, get rid of Hagar and Ishmael. I don't want Ishmael to get anything that belongs to Isaac. Abraham was upset because Ishmael was his son too. But God said, don't be upset. Listen to Sarah. Isaac is the son that a whole nation of people will come from. But I will make Ishmael's family into a nation too. So early the next morning, Abraham gave Hagar some food, and he gave her some water in a bag made from animal skins. And then he sent Hagar and Ishmael away. Hagar carried the food and water on her shoulders, and she had Ishmael. And Ishmael went off into the desert. One day, Hagar and Ishmael drank the last of the water, and Hagar set Ishmael under a bush. Then she sat nearby. I can't stand to see him die, she thought. She started crying. Ishmael was crying too, and God heard him. God's angel called out, "What's wrong, Hagar? Don't be scared. God hears Ishmael crying. Go hold his hand, tell him to get up. I'm going to make his family into a big nation." Then God let Hagar see a well of water, and she filled her bag with water to give Ishmael a drink. So God watched over Ishmael. Ishmael grew up in the desert, and he was good at using a bow and arrow. He married a woman from Egypt, and now the king of Syria spoke to Abraham. "I know God takes care of you," he said. "I have been kind to you, so promise that you will be kind to me." "I promised it, Abraham, but your servants took one of my wells." "I didn't know that," said the king. "I don't know who did it." So Abraham and the king made a deal. Abraham took 7 lambs to the king. "I'm giving you these lambs," said Abraham. "This shows I'm telling the truth. I dug this well." Then the king went home. Abraham planted trees there and worshiped God, and he lived in that land for a long time. Genesis 22. Abraham's test, Genesis 22. One day God gave Abraham a test. God called Abraham. "I am here," said Abraham. "Isaac is your only son." God said, "He is the son you love. Take him to the land of Moriah, and I will show you a mountain. Put Isaac on an altar, and he will be the gift you give me on the altar." So next morning, Abraham got up early, and he put saddle. What is that? Toothpaste somewhere. On his donkey, and he cut wood to put on the altar. And then he took Isaac and 2 servants, and they left, and they traveled for 2 days. And the next day, Abraham looked out over the land. He saw the place where God wanted him to go. So Abraham took his servants. He kept the donkey here. "Keep the donkey here. Isaac and I will go to worship, and then we'll come back." Isaac carried the wood. Abraham carried the fire and the knife for the gift, and they would give a gift to God on the altar. Abraham and Isaac walked on together. "Father," said Isaac. "Yes," said Abraham. "We have wood," said Isaac. "We can make a fire, but where is the lamb for the altar?" "God will give it to us," said Abraham, and they walked on. At last they came to the place God told Abraham about, and Abraham piled up stones to make an altar, and he put the wood on it, and then he put Isaac on the wood. On the altar, Isaac would be the gift on the altar. But God's angel called out Abraham. "I'm still here," said Abraham. "Take Isaac off the altar," he said. "Now I know that God is the most important one to you. You were going to obey God. You were going to give him your only son." Then Abraham looked up, and he saw a ram. Its horns were stuck in a bush. So Abraham took the Isaac off the altar. He got the ram, and he put it on the altar as the gift for God. God's angel called to Abraham again. "Here's what God says. You were going to give me your only son. So I promise I will give my riches to you. Isaac's children will become a very big family, and there will be as many people as stars in the sky. There will be as many as the sand on the beach. Good will come to all nations on earth. It's all because you obeyed me." Abraham, Isaac went down the mountain, and the servants were waiting for them. And then they all went home. Oh, God. Sorry for the noise. So, Genesis 23, the cave. Abraham and Sarah went to Hebron in the land of Canaan, and while they were there, Sarah died. Abraham cried, and then he went to the people of that land. I'm a stranger here, he said. Sell me some land. I need a place to lay my wife's body. The people said, you can put her body in any of our caves. Choose the best one. Abraham bowed, and he said that he wanted the cave in the one of the fields. And he said, here, buy it. The man who owned it said, I'll give you the field in the cave. Abraham bowed down again, and I'll pay whatever it costs. Take the money, and I'll put my wife's body there. The land cost 400 pieces of silver, said the man. So Abraham counted out the money, and he bought the field and the cave, and he bought all the trees in the field. And then he put Sarah's body in the cave. Looking for a wife, Genesis chapter 24 and 25. And so Abraham was old, and God had given him all kinds of good things. And one day Abraham called his best servant to him. And Abraham said, make me a promise. Promise you'll find a wife for Isaac, but she should not be from this land. Go back to the land I came from and get a wife for Isaac from that land. What if she doesn't want to come? Asked the servant. Should I take Isaac to the other land to live? No, said Abraham. God will send his angel ahead of you, and he will help you get a wife for Isaac. But if she doesn't want to come, don't make her. Just don't take Isaac to that land. So the servant promised. Then he took 10 camels. He took all kinds of good gifts, and he left on his trip. After many days, the servant stopped at a well. It was almost evening, and he made his camel sit down. It was almost time for the woman to come to get water. The servant prayed. God, he said, be kind to Abraham. I'm standing by the well. The women are coming to get water here. I'll speak to one of the girls, and I'll ask her to get me some water with the jar. Show me the one you choose, God. Have her give me a drink, and have her say that she will give my camels water too. And then I'll know you want her to be Isaac's wife. And I'll know you are being kind to Isaac's father, Abraham. Before the servant stopped praying, Rebecca came to the well. She was beautiful. She held her jar on her shoulder. She filled her jar with water. The servant quickly went over to her. Please give me a drink of water from your jar. Have a drink, said Rebecca. She took her jar down from her shoulder, and she gave him a drink. And then she said, I'll give your camel some water too. And she gave the rest of the water to the camels, and then she ran to the well again for more water. And she got enough water for all the servants' camels. The servant watched Rebecca carefully, and he wanted to make sure God had chosen her. The camels drank the water. Then the servant gave Rebecca a gold ring, and he gave her 2 gold armbands. Who is your father? He asked. Near's son, said Rebecca. Now the servant knew that Nahor was Abraham's brother. Is there room at your house for us? He asked. Could we spend the night? Yes, said Rebecca. There is plenty of food for your camels, and there is room for you to stay with us. The servant bowed down, and he worshipped God. Praise God, he said. He has led me to Abraham's family. Rebecca ran home, and she told what had happened. Rebecca had a brother named Laban, and he heard Rebecca's story, and he saw the ring and the armbands. And so he went to find the servant. Laban found him standing by his camels near the well. Come with me, said Laban. I have made a place for you at our house. I made a place for the camels too. So the servant went home with Laban, and he took the packs of the camels, and he fed them and gave them water. And then he and his man washed up, and then it was time for dinner. Food was ready for them. But the servant said, I can't eat yet. I have to tell you something first. Tell us, said Laban. I am Abraham's servant, he said. God made Abraham rich with sheep and cows, and he is rich with silver and gold. He has servants and camels and donkeys. Abraham also has a son, and he has given his son everything he has. The servant told Rebekah's family about his promise to Abraham. He told them how he prayed by the well, and he told them how Rebekah came to the well. He told how she gave him and his camels a drink. And now tell me, said the servant, may Rebekah come home with me. God made this happen, said Rebekah's father. So take Rebekah with you. The servant bowed to God, and then he gave gold and silver dishes to Rebekah, and he gave clothes to her. He gave gifts to Rebekah's brother and her mother too. Then the servant and his men ate dinner, and they stayed there for one night. The next morning the servant said, we must go. We have to get back to Abraham now. But Rebekah's brother and mother didn't want them to go. Let Rebekah stay here 10 days. And they said, then she can go with you. Don't make us stay here, said the servant. I have done what I promised Abraham. Now I need to go back to him. Let's ask Rebekah what she wants to do, her family said. So they asked her. I'll go now, said Rebekah. So they let Rebekah go with the servant, and Rebekah and her maids got on their camels, and they rode off with the servant. One evening Isaac was out in the fields, and he was thinking. He looked up and saw the camels coming his way, and so he went to meet them. Rebekah looked up too. She saw Isaac, and she got off her camel. Who is that man? She asked the servant. That's Isaac, said the servant. Rebekah covered her face with a thin cloth. The servant told Isaac what had happened. Isaac married Rebekah. He loved her. After Sarah died, Abraham married a woman named Keturah. I don't know if I say her name right. And they had lots of children, and Abraham gave gifts to his children as they grew up. And then he sent them away to live in the east, and he wanted them to live away from Isaac. Abraham saved everything else he owned to give it to Isaac. Abraham lived to be 175 years old, and when he died, Isaac and Ishmael put his body in a cave. It was the same cave where Sarah's body was. Twins, Genesis chapter 25. Rebekah could not have any children, so Isaac prayed for her, and God answered Isaac's prayer. Rebekah was going to have babies. Two of them, Rebekah could feel them inside her, and they were pushing each other around. Noisy thing, gotta go. We're gonna use the microphone since it's so loud outside. So twins, Genesis chapter 25. Rebekah could not have any children, so Isaac prayed for her. God answered Isaac's prayer. Rebekah was going to have babies, two of them. Rebekah could feel them inside her, and they were pushing each other around. And Rebekah asked God, what's happening here? God said, these two babies will start nations, and one will be stronger than the other. The older one will serve the younger one. Sometime later, Rebekah had her babies, and they were twin boys. The first one looked red. His body was hairy, and they called him Esau. The next baby was holding on to Esau's heel, and they named him Jacob. Esau became a very good hunter, and when he grew up, he liked to go out into the fields. But Jacob was quiet. He liked to stay home around the tents. Isaac loved Esau best. That's because Isaac liked to eat. Isaac liked to eat the meat that Esau cooked after hunting, but Rebekah loved Jacob best. And one day, Jacob cooked some soup. Esau came in from his time in the fields, and he was hungry. I'm so hungry, I'm about to die, said Esau. Hurry up and give me some of that red soup. First, you must promise me something, said Jacob. When our father dies, he will leave most of what he owns to you. Promise me that you will let me have it all. All right, said Esau. After all, I'm about to die of hunger. Promise, said Jacob. So Esau promised, and Jacob gave him some of the soup and some bread, and Esau ate the food and left. Genesis chapter 26, Isaac in the land of Gerar. A time came when there was not enough food crops would not grow in the fields, so Isaac moved to the land of Gerar. God told Isaac, stay here for a while. I will do good things for you here. One day in your family will own this land and will be part of the promise I gave Abraham. Your children and their children will become a big family. There will be many of them, as many as the stars in the sky. Good will come to all nations because of Abraham obeyed me. So Isaac stayed in the land of Gerar. And now Rebekah was beautiful, and the men of Gerar asked Isaac about her. Isaac said, she is my sister, and he was too scared to tell them she was his wife. He was afraid they might kill him, and one of them might want Rebekah to be his wife. And one day the king looked out his window, and he saw Isaac hugging Rebekah. So he called for Isaac, and Rebekah is really your wife. He said, why didn't you tell me? I was afraid someone might kill me, said Isaac. The king was upset, and he said, no one may bother Isaac or Rebekah. Isaac planted seeds in the land of Gerar, and lots of crops grew for him. He had 100 times more than when he started. God was being good to him, and he got very rich, and he had many sheep and cows and servants. And now the people of Gerar wished they had what Isaac had, so they filled up all his wells with dirt. Leave us, they said to the king. You have too much power. So Isaac moved to the valley. Isaac's servants dug new wells there, and they found fresh water. And now some of the men of Gerar took care of cows, and they said, this is our water. So Isaac called it the well of making a fuss. And then Isaac's servants dug a new well, but the men began to fight over the one too. Isaac called that well the well of fighting, so they moved and dug another well, new well. And this time no one came to fight over it. Isaac called the well wide places, and he said, now God has made room for us. One night God said to Isaac, don't be afraid, I am with you. So Isaac made an altar at that place, and he worshiped God there. And then the king of Gerar came to see Isaac. Why did you come here? Asked Isaac. You asked me to leave. The king said, we can see that God is with you. We want to promise that we won't fight each other. We want to have peace. So Isaac had a big dinner for the king, and the next morning they promised each other to have peace. And then the king and his people left. On the same day, Isaac's servants came to him. They told him about another well they had dug. We found water, and they said, so he called that well Promise. How many pages do we have left, guys? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So Jacob tricks Isaac, Genesis chapter 27 and 28. Isaac grew old and he could not see anymore, and one day he called Esau to come to him. I am old now, said Isaac. I don't know when I might die, so take your bow and arrow and go to the field and get some meat for me and cook the meat the way I like it. Let me eat it, and then I will pray for God's best to come to you. Rebekah heard what Isaac told Esau, and she waited until Esau had gone hunting, and then she talked to Jacob. I heard your father talking to Esau, said Rebekah. He told Esau to bring him some wheat to eat, and then he is going to pray for God's best for Esau. So listen to me. Do what I say, and bring me some goat meat, and I will cook it the way your father likes it. And then you can take it to him, and he can eat it and pray for God's best for you. But Esau is hairy, said Jacob. I have smooth skin. What if my father feels my smooth skin? Then he will think I'm playing a trick on him. He will pray for bad things for me, and he won't pray for good things. The bad words can be for me, said Rebekah. Just do what I tell you. So Jacob got meat for Rebekah, his mother. She cooked it the way Isaac liked it, and then she put Esau's best clothes on Jacob, and she put goat skins on Jacob's hands and neck, and she also had the goat meat and bread to Jacob. Jacob went to Isaac's father, and he said, Who is it? Asked Isaac. I'm Esau, said Jacob. I did what you asked me to do. Eat some of this meat, then you can pray for God's best for me. How could you get the meat so fast? Asked Isaac. God help me, said Jacob. Then Isaac said, Let me touch you. I want to make sure you're really Esau. Jacob moved closer to Isaac, and Isaac felt his skin. Your voice sounds like Jacob, but your hands feel like Esau. Are you really Esau? He asked. Yes, said Jacob. Bring me the meat to eat, said Isaac. Then I will pray for God's best to come to you. And so Jacob took the meat to Isaac. Isaac ate it, and then Jacob gave Isaac some wine, and Isaac drank it. Come and kiss me, my son, said Isaac. Jacob kissed Isaac, and Isaac smelled Esau's clothes on Jacob, so Isaac prayed for God's riches to come to Jacob. Isaac said, My son smells like a field that God has been good to me, good to. I pray that God will give you a rain from heaven, and I pray that he will give you rich earth. I pray that he will give you lots of grain and wine, and I pray that other nations will be your servants. I pray that your brothers and your other people will bow to you, and may bad come to people who speak bad words about you. And may God come to people who say good things about you. Jacob left Isaac after this prayer. It was not long until Esau came back from hunting, and he brought back the good meat his father loved, and he cooked it and took it to Isaac. Sit up and eat, said Esau, then you can pray for God's best to come to me. Who is this Isaac? Asked Isaac. I'm your son Esau, said Esau. Isaac began to shake. Who was in here before? Who cooked the food for me? I prayed for God's best to come to him. Pray for me too, Father, Esau cried. Jacob tricked me, said Isaac. He took the prayer I was going to pray for you. He has tricked me 2 times, said Esau. He sold me soup so he gets everything you should give me when you die. And now he took my prayer. Isn't there any prayer you can say for me? All the family will bow to Jacob, said Isaac. There will be his servants, and he will have lots of grain and wine. What can I do for you? Is there just one prayer for good things, Father? Oh, pray for me too, said Esau. Esau cried. And then Isaac said, You will not live with rich earth. You will not live with rich earth. You will not live with heaven's rain. You will fight, and you will be a servant to Jacob. But a day will come when you won't serve him anymore. And from then on, Esau was angry with Jacob, and he said, It will not be long until my father dies, and I will kill Jacob. Someone told Rachel what Esau was said, so she called for Jacob. Esau plans to kill you, she said. Run away to my brother Laban, and you can stay there until Esau stops being so angry. I will let you know when you can come back. Now Esau had married 2 women, and they were families who did not know or love God. Rebecca talked to Isaac about it. It's hard for me to live with these women around. What if Jacob marries the same kind of woman? Then I wouldn't want to live anymore. So Isaac called Jacob. Don't marry someone from this land, he said. Go to Laban's house and find a wife from his family. May God give you the same promise he gave my father Abraham, and may your family become a big nation. God. So Genesis 28. Jacob left his home and began his trip to Laban's, and the sun went down before he got there. So Jacob stopped to rest, and he took a stone and used it as a pillow, and he lay down for the night. That night, Jacob had a dream, and he saw a ladder that went all the way up to heaven, and God's angels were going up and down the ladder. And God stood at the top of the ladder, and God said, I am the Lord, I am the God of Abraham and Isaac, and I will give your family the land you are sleeping on. Your family will become a big, and there will be so many people, and they will be like dust. And they will live in the west and the east, and they will live in through the north and the south. Good will come to all nations because of your family. God also said, I will be with you, and I will watch over you everywhere you go. I won't leave you, and I will keep all my promises to you. Jacob woke up thinking, he said, God is here, and I didn't even know it. It made him afraid, and this place is wonderful, he said. This is God's house. This is heaven's whole door. And early in the morning, Jacob got up. He set up the stone, and he slept on it. He slept on, and it made a post. And Jacob put oil on the post, and he named it the house of God. And then Jacob made a promise. If God watches over me, he will bring me back here safely. He will give me food and clothes. The stone will be God's place, and I will give to God part of everything he gives me. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 left. Jacob in the land of the east, Genesis 29. Jacob kept going. On his trip at last, he came to the land of the east, and there was a well in a field there, and 3 groups of sheep sat there near the well, and that's where they came to get water. But a huge stone covered the top of the well, and the shepherds would wait until all the sheep were there, and then they would take off the stone and give their sheep water, and after that they would put the stone back. Where are you from? Jacob asked the shepherds. From Haran, said the shepherds. Do you know? Laban asked Jacob. Yes, he said. How is he? Asked Jacob. He is doing well, they answered. In fact, here comes his daughter Rachel. Now she is bringing their sheep. It's too early to gather all of the sheep, said Jacob, so go ahead and give yourself sheep some water. Then you can lead them back to the fields. We can't do that, said the shepherds. We have to wait until all the sheep are here. Then we will take the stone off the well. That's when we will water our sheep. Just then Rachel walked up, and she was leading her father's sheep, and she was a shepherdess. Jacob saw Rachel, and he took the stone off the well, and he gave water to her sheep, and then he kissed her. He began to cry, and he told Rachel that he was Rebekah's son. Rachel's father, Laban, was his uncle, and Rachel ran back and told her father. Laban came out quickly to meet, and Laban hugged him and took him home. Genesis chapter 29. Jacob stayed with Laban for a month. Jacob worked for him. One day, Laban said, "You are a part of my family, but I should pay you for the work you do. What do you want me to pay you?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. Rachel had a big sister named Leah, but Rachel was prettier than Leah. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "Will you let Rachel marry me if you were to work 7 years for her?" "That's fine," said Laban. "You may stay here and work for me." Jacob worked for 7 years, and so he could marry Rachel, but it didn't seem like a long time to Jacob. That's because he loved Rachel so much. At last, the 7 years were over. Jacob said, "It's time for me to marry Rachel." So Laban had a wedding party, and he gave the bride to Jacob. But when Leah saw his bride, he saw she was Leah. "What did you do to me?" Jacob asked Laban. "I worked to marry Rachel, and you freed me." "That's how we do it in this land," said Laban. "The older girl must get married before her younger sister. You can marry Rachel next week, but you must work 7 more years for me." So the next week, Jacob married Rachel, and how he loved Rachel more than Leah. And then Jacob worked 7 more years for Laban. Lots of babies. Genesis 29:30. God saw that Jacob did not love Leah, so God let Leah have children. And she had a baby boy, and God saw how sad I was. Leah said Leah. So she called the baby Reuben. Sometime later, Leah had another baby boy, and God gave me another baby, she said. It's because he saw that God does not love me. So she called this baby Simon. After that, Leah had another baby boy, and now Jacob will stay with me, she said. So she called the baby Levi. Later, Levi had another baby. Later, she had another baby boy. Praise God, said Leah. And she called the baby Judah. But Rachel did not have any children, and she wanted to be like Leah, so she told Jacob, "Take my servant. She can be a wife to you. Then I'll have children that I can call mine." So Rachel's servant had a baby boy. "God heard me," said Rachel. So she named Rachel. The baby died, and then Rachel's servant had another baby boy. "I have won the fight with my sister," said Rachel. So Rachel called him Naphtali. Naphtali, I don't know how to say that. And now Leah saw that she wasn't having any more babies, so she gave her servant to Jacob. Her servant became another wife for him, and that way Leah could have more children in her family. It was not long before Leah's servant had a baby boy, and this is a good thing that happened. So Leah, she named the baby God. Then Leah's servant had another baby boy. "I'm so happy," said Leah. She called the baby Asher. And then Leah herself had another baby boy, and this is a gift from God, she said. She named this baby Ishar. Sometimes later, Leah had another baby boy. "This is a wonderful gift," said Leah. "I have had 6 sons for Jacob." So she named the baby Zebulun. Later, she had a baby girl, and she named the baby girl Dinah. And then God answered Rachel's prayer. She had her own baby, a baby boy. I feel good now, said Rachel. She named that baby Joseph and said, may God give me another son. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 more pages. So Jacob goes home, Genesis chapter 30 and 31. Jacob went to Laban and he said, I've done a lot of work for you. I want to take my wives and children and I want to go home. Please stay here, said Laban. I know that God has been good to you. Just tell me what you want me to pay you. I have worked very hard for you, said Jacob. Think about when I began working for you. You had only a few animals. Now you have a lot. God has been good to you because I work for you. But I should go do something for my own family now. What do you want? Asked Laban. Jacob said, just do one thing. Give me all the dark or spotted sheep and goats. They will be my pay. Then I will go on working for you. All right, said Laban. But that day, Laban took all the dark or spotted goats, and he gave them to his sons to take care of. And he took the goats, and they traveled away from Jacob for 3 days. Jacob still cared of the sheep. Jacob still took care of the sheep, and they began having babies that were dark or spotted. So Jacob gathered those sheep for himself, and he didn't let them get mixed in with Laban's sheep. The dark and spotted sheep were very strong, so Jacob got the strong sheep. Laban got the weak sheep, and Jacob got lots of sheep. He also got camels and donkeys and servants. And now Laban's son said, Jacob took sheep from our father. He has made himself rich that way. Jacob heard what they said, and he also saw that Laban wasn't as friendly as before. Then God told Jacob, go home, go where you live before I'll be with you. Jacob called for Rachel and Leah, and they went out to the field to meet him. Jacob said, your father isn't as friendly to me now. You know how hard I have worked for him. But he tricked me. He changed my pay many times. But God has been good to me. God has taken care of me. Now God wants me to move back to my own land. Rachel and Leah said, do whatever God tells you. So Jacob got some camels, his wives and children, and rode on them. Jacob sent his cows ahead with other things he owned. And then Jacob started the trip back to Canaan. And now Laban had gone to cut wool off his sheep while he was gone. Rachel stole the handmade gods, and they were idols that Laban kept in his house. Jacob did not tell Laban that he was leaving, and Jacob left, and he crossed the river and set out toward his hill country. 3 days later, 3 days went by, and then someone told Laban that Jacob had gone. So Laban got the men of his family together, and they chased after Jacob, and they found Jacob camped in the hill country. Laban set up his tents there too. But that night Laban had a dream, and God spoke to Laban in the dream, be careful about what you say to Jacob. The next day Laban spoke to Jacob. Why did you run away in the secret? He said. Why did you fool me? Why didn't you tell me you were going? I could have sent you away with joy. We could have had music, harps, and singing, and you didn't even give me a chance to say goodbye. I didn't get to kiss my daughters and grandchildren. You were very foolish, said Laban. I could have hurt you, but last night God spoke to me. He told me not to say anything good or bad. But why did you steal my idols? I was scared, said Jacob. That's why I left without telling you. I thought you would make my wives stay here. But we did not take your idols. You can kill anybody who you find who took your idols. If you find anything that is yours, take it. Jacob didn't know that Rachel had taken the idols. Laban looked for his idols in Jacob's tent, and he looked in Leah's tent. He looked in her servant's tent, and he looked in the tent of Rachel's servant. Then he went into Rachel's tent. Rachel had hidden the idols in her camel saddle. The saddle was on the ground, and she was sitting on it. When her father walked in, Laban looked and looked. "Don't be mad at me," said Rachel, "but I can't stand up right now. I'm not feeling well." So Laban left Rachel's tent without finding the idols. And then Jacob was mad. "What did I do wrong? You looked everywhere. You didn't find anything that is yours. I worked for you 20 years. I took care of your sheep and goats. I got hot in the day and cold at night. There were many times when I could not sleep, and you changed my pay 10 times. You made it last each time. But God took care of me. If he hadn't, I would be leaving without anything of my own. But these are my daughters and my grandchildren," said Laban. "Let's make peace." So Jacob set up a stone, a big pile of stones too, and these stones are the sign of our promise, said Laban. God will see it. God will see if we keep our promise, so we will not hurt each other. Jacob gave an animal as a gift to God, and then he asked Laban and his men to come to dinner. And they ate next to the pile of stones, and after they ate, they spent the night. In the morning, Laban kissed his daughters, and he kissed his grandchildren, and he and his men left and went back home. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. It's still 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I must have been counting it wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So meeting Esau, Genesis 42, 33. Jacob and his family left for Canaan, and God's angels met Jacob on the way, and Jacob saw the angels, and he said, "This is God's camp." Jacob sent some servants ahead, and they took this message to Jacob's brother Esau. "I have been at Laban's. Now I have cows and donkeys, and I have sheep and goats and servants, and I hope you will be kind to me." The servants took this message to Esau, and they came back to Jacob. "Esau is coming here," they said. "He has 400 men with him." Jacob was scared. He put his family and the servants and animals in 2 groups. Half the people and animals were in one group, and half of them were in another group. Esau might fight one group, he fought, but the other group can get away. Then Jacob prayed to God, "You have been kind to me. I am not good enough for your kindness. I came across the Jordan River a long time ago. I only had my walking stick with me, but now I am going back across with two groups. I pray that you will save me from Eswa, and you promised to make my family into a big nation. You said there would be more people than the sand. Then Jacob chose a gift for Eswa, and he chose 220 goats and 220 sheep. He got 30 camels with their baby camels, and he took 40 cows, 10 bulls, and 30 donkeys, and he gave them to his servants. You go first, Jacob told them. Stay in different groups. Eswa will meet the first group. And when he asks whose animals these are, tell him that these are Jacob's. Say that they are a gift. Say that Jacob is on his way. Jacob told the other group to say the same thing, and he hoped that the gifts would keep Esau from being angry. Jacob sent these gifts on later that night, and he sent his wives and children across the river, but Jacob spent the night by himself. That night a man came to Jacob. That man had a fight with Jacob, and they kept fighting all night long. But the man could not win because Jacob was strong, and so the man touched Jacob's hip right away. Jacob's hip was hurt. Let me go now, said the man. Day is coming. Only if you pray for God's best for me, said Jacob. What is your name? Asked the man. Jacob, he asked. Now your name will be Israel, said the man. Why? Because you have been fighting with God and with people, and you have won. Who are you? Asked Jacob. Why are you asking me? Said the man. Then he prayed for God's best for Jacob. The sun was high in the sky when Jacob left, and he could not walk well because his hip was hurt. I saw God, said Jacob, but I did not die. Jacob went on with his family and then saw Esau and his 400 men coming, so Jacob put his family into groups. He sent the two servants and their children out first, and next he sent Leah with her children, and he sent Rachel and Joseph last. But Jacob went ahead of them all, and he bowed down to Esau. And Esau ran up to Jacob and hugged him and kissed him. Then he saw Jacob's big family. Who are they? He asked. These are my wives and children, said Jacob. They passed by Esau in their groups, and they bowed down to Esau. Why did you send all the goats ahead of you? Why did you send sheep and cows? Asked Esau. They are a gift for you, said Jacob. So you will be kind. Be kind to me. I have enough goats and sheep and cows, said Esau, and you may keep them. No, said Jacob. I'm so happy to see your conveys. So please keep the animals as my gift to you, for God has been very good to me. So Esau kept them, and I'll go along with you on your trip and help you, he said. But Jacob said, the children can't go very fast. They are too little, so you can go on. We will come more slowly. So Esau went back home, and Jacob took his family to a different place in Canaan, and he set up his tents, and he built an altar to God there. This is so long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's still saying 8 pages. one more baby. Genesis 45. 35. This thing way over there. Genesis 35. God told Jacob, go to Bethel and build an altar to me there. So Jacob told his family and servants, get rid of all your idols and clean yourself up. Put on clean clothes, and we're going to go to Bethel, and we're building an altar to God there. They all gave their idols to Jacob, and Jacob dug a hole under the oak tree, and he put the idols in the hole, and he covered them up and left them there. Then they set out for Bethel. At Bethel, Jacob built an altar to God. Bethel was the same place where Jacob had his dream. It was a dream about the angels on the ladder. It was where God talked to Jacob for the first time. And that was when he was running away from Esau. God came to Jacob again there. God said, your name will be Israel now. I give this land to you and your children. Kings will come from your people, and this will be their land. Jacob set up a stone post there, and he put oil on the post, and he called that place Bethel. And then Jacob traveled on. Rachel was going to have a baby while they were on the trip. The baby was born, but Rachel had a hard time having the baby. Don't be afraid, said the woman who was helping Rachel. You have a baby boy. But Rachel was dying. Before she died, she named the baby Benuel. Jacob called him Benjamin. And then Rachel died, and Jacob made a grave for Rachel, and he set up a post to mark where her grave was. Jacob stayed in the land of Canaan. Sometimes later, Jacob went home to see his father, Isaac, and then Isaac died. Esau and Jacob put his body in a grave. So the dreamer, Genesis 47. Jacob and Rachel had an older son. Joseph was growing up, and he was 17 years old, and he took care of sheep. And when his brothers were not acting right, so he told his father Jacob. Jacob was also called Israel, and he loved Joseph more than his other sons. He made a beautiful long coat for Joseph. Now Joseph's brothers saw that Jacob loved Joseph best, and they hated Joseph for that. In fact, they could hardly say anything kind to him. And one time Joseph had a dream, and he told his brothers about it. We were making piles of wheat in the field, and my pile of wheat stood up, and your piles of wheat came all around mine. They bowed to mine. Joseph's brothers hated him even more because of his dream. Do you think that you'll be our boss? They said. Joseph had another dream, and he told his brothers about this dream. 2, the sun and the moon bowed down to me, he said, and 11 stars bowed down to me. Joseph told his father Jacob about this dream. Jacob spoke, now, Joseph, you do really think our whole family will bow to you? Joseph's brothers were angry, and they wanted to be special too. His father just kept thinking about what Joseph had said. And one day Jacob called for his son Joseph. Your brothers are taking care of the sheep. I want you to go to them and see if everything is going well for them. Then come back and tell me. So Joseph went, and he came to where his brothers were supposed to be, but they were not there. A man saw Joseph in the field, and he asked, who are you looking for? My brothers, said Joseph. Do you know where they took the sheep? I heard them say they were going to Dothan, said the man. So Joseph went to Dothan, and that's where he found his brothers. But they saw him coming before he got there. They made plans to kill him. And here's the dreamer, they said. Let's kill him and throw him into a well. Well, tell our father a wild animal ate him up, and then we'll find out what happens to his dreams. But Reuben tried to save Joseph. He said, let's not kill him. Throw him into the dry well, but don't kill him. Reuben was planning to save Joseph, and he planned to take Joseph home later. Joseph walked up to his brothers, and he pulled his beautiful long coat off, and he threw him into the dry well. And then they sat down and ate their lunch, and now along came a line of men with camels. The camels had packs and spices on their backs, and they were on their way to Egypt. Judah said, it won't work do us any good to kill Joseph. Let's sell him to these men. The others thought that was a good idea. The line of camels came close, and the brothers took Joseph out of the well, and they sold him to the men, and they got 20 pieces of silver for him. And then the men in camels went on to Egypt. Now Reuben did not know his brothers had sold Joseph. He went back to the well to save him, but Joseph wasn't there. And Reuben ran to his brothers. Joseph is not there, he said. Now what can I do? They took Joseph's coat, and they killed a goat, and they dipped the coat in the goat's blood. And then they took the coat to their father. Look at what we found, and they asked. They said, does this belong to Joseph? Jacob saw it once that it was Joseph's coat. It was Joseph's coat, he said. A wild animal had eaten him. Jacob was so upset that he tore his clothes, and then he put on clothes made of old sackcloth. He cried for days and days, and his family tried to make him feel better. But he would not cheer up. I would be sad until the day I die, he said. While this was happening, the men and camels got to Egypt, and there they sold Joseph. The captain of the king's guard bought him. So at the captain's house, Genesis 49, God took care of Joseph. He lived in this captain's house. The captain saw that God helped Joseph. Good things happened when Joseph was around. So the captain put Joseph in charge of everything in the house. And with Joseph in charge, the captain didn't worry about anything. God took care of his house. And now the captain's wife saw that Joseph was very handsome. So she said to Joseph, "Come and be like a husband to me." She actually wanted to sleep with him. But Joseph wouldn't. He said, "The captain trusts me. How could I do such a thing? It will not be right. It would be a great sin against God." Every day, the captain's wife said the same thing every day, and Joseph answered the same thing. In fact, he tried not to be around the captain's wife. And one day, Joseph went into the house, and he was going to take care of some work. No one else was around, but the captain's wife was there, and she took hold of Joseph's coat. "Come and be like a husband to me," she said. And Joseph ran out of the house, and he left his coat in her hands. And then the captain's wife called her servants to see this. She said, "Joseph came in here to be like a husband to me, but I called for help, and then he ran off in a hurry. See, he left his coat here." The captain's wife kept Joseph's coat with her, and later the captain came home, and then she told him the same thing. And the captain was very angry, and he threw Joseph into jail. But God was still with Joseph. God was good to him. The jailkeeper liked Joseph and put Joseph in charge of other people in jail. The jailkeeper trusted Joseph, and he did not have to worry. And God helped Joseph do a good job. And God helped Joseph take care of everything. Two strange dreams, Genesis 40. And one day, two new men were sent to jail, and one was a man who took the king his drinks, and he was a waiter, and the other was the king's baker, and he had made the king angry. That's why he put them in jail. Joseph was put in charge of them, and one night the baker and the waiter both had dreams, and the next morning Joseph came to see them, and he could tell that they were upset. "Why are you sad today?" he asked. "It's because of our dreams," they said. "There is no one to tell us what our dreams mean." "God can tell what dreams mean," said Joseph. "Tell me what your dream." The waiter said, "My dream was about a vine, and there were 3 branches on it. The vine had buds, and they turned into flowers, and then grapes grew. I held the king's cup, and I put grapes into the cup. Then I gave it to the king." "Here's what your dream means," said Joseph. "The 3 branches mean the 3 days. And 3 days were passed, and then the king will let you out of jail, and you will get to give him drinks again. You will see the king. So please tell him about me, and see if you can get me out of jail too. I did not do anything wrong. I should not be here." Now the baker saw that the waiter's dream was good, so he told Joseph his dream too. 3 baskets of bread were on my heads," he said, "and the top basket held bread for the king. But birds came and ate the bread up." "Here is what your dream means," said Joseph. "The 3 baskets mean 3 days. 3 days from now, the king will hang you. You will die, and the birds will eat your body." And 3 days went by, and it was the king's birthday, so he had a party, and he took the waiter and the baker out of jail, and he gave the waiter his old job back, but he hanged the baker. It went just the very way Joseph said it would, but the waiter didn't tell the king about Joseph. He forgot. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages left. The king's dreams, Genesis 41. 2 years passed one night, and the king of Egypt had a dream. He dreamed that he stood by the Nile River, and 7 fat cows came out of the river, and they ate the plants that grew by the river bank. And then the 7 ugly then thin cows came out of the river, and they ate up the 7 fat cows. And the king woke up from his dream, but he went back to sleep and had another dream. 7 good fat heads of wheat grew up, and they grew out. They grew on the stem. And then 7 thin heads of wheat came up, and the thin wheat ate up the fat wheat. And the king woke up again. The next morning the king was upset, and he called for the men who could do magic. He called for his wise men, and he told them his dreams, but no one could tell him what they meant. Then the waiter remembered Joseph. He said to the king, I remember now you were angry with me and the baker. You sent us to jail. In jail we had dreams. And there was another man in jail. He told us the meaning of our dreams, and things happened just the way he said they would. And so the king called for Joseph, and Joseph shaved and put on his clean clothes, and they came to the king. I had a dream, said the king. No one can tell me what it means. I heard that you can tell what dreams mean. I can't, said Joseph, but God can. So the king told Joseph about the fat cows, the fat and thin cows, and he told Joseph about the fat and thin wheat. Joseph said, both of your dreams mean the same thing. God is showing you what he was going to do. The 7 fat cows, and the fat wheat are the same. They mean 7 years. Lots of food will grow in those 7 years. And the 7 thin cows and the thin wheat are the same. They mean 7 more years. No food will grow then. So first this land will have 7 years with enough food. Then there will be 7 years of no food. This will happen right away. So you should find a wise man, put him in charge of Egypt, and save food that grows in the good years. Then later the people can eat the food they save. The king liked Joseph's idea, and he said, God has told this to you. You are the wisest of all, so you will be in charge of my palace. Everyone will obey you, and I will be the only one greater than you. You will be in charge of all the land of Egypt. And the king took his own ring off his finger, and he put it on Joseph's finger, and he gave Joseph fine clothes, and he gave him a gold chain to wear around his neck. He let Joseph ride in a chariot, and there were men who ran in front of Joseph's chariot, and they called out, make room. The king even chose a wife for Joseph. And now Joseph, 30 years old, he took many trips around Egypt. For 7 years, plenty of food grew, so Joseph took the people to gather the food, and they saved in their cities. And they saved it for the time when no food would grow, and Joseph made the people save lots of wheat, and there was so much it was like sand by the sea. In fact, they stopped counting how much they had. They could not even measure it. And now Joseph and his wife had 2 sons. And Joseph said, God has let me forget my trouble. So he called his first son Messiah. Joseph said, God has sent me good things to me. So he called his next son Ephraim. But one day the 7 good years were over, and no food would grow, and all the other lands ran out of food. But there was still food in Egypt, and that's because he had saved it. Joseph let the people buy wheat. Even people from other lands came to buy wheat, and that's because their fields grew no crops. One, two, three, so still 5 left. Visitors from Canaan, Genesis 42. No crops of grain were grown in the land of Canaan. That's where Joseph's father and brothers and their families lived. Joseph's father, Jacob, heard that Egypt had wheat, so he talked to his sons about it. Why are you just looking at each other? He asked. Go to Egypt and buy some wheat for us. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went to buy wheat, and Jacob would not let Benjamin go with them. Benjamin was the only other child of Rachel. Jacob was afraid that something bad might happen to Benjamin. It wasn't long before Joseph's brothers got to Egypt, and they went to see the man in charge, and he was the one who sold the wheat, and he was Joseph. Joseph's brothers bowed to him, and Joseph knew who they were right away, but he acted as if he didn't know them. "Where are you from?" he asked in a mean voice. "We are from Canaan," they said. "We came to buy food." They had no idea that this man was Joseph. Joseph remembered his dreams from long ago, and he said, "I think you came to trick us. You came to see how you could take over this land." "Oh, no," they said. "We just came to buy food. We are all brothers. We are good people. We tell the truth. We are not here to trick you." "Yes, you are," said Joseph. "But they said there used to be 12 of us. Our youngest brother is back in Canaan with our father, and one of our brothers is gone." "Just as I said, you are here to trick us," said Joseph. "This is how I will test you. I won't let you leave until your youngest brother comes. One of you must go and get him. The others have to stay here in jail. I'll find out if you're telling the truth or not." Then Joseph put them all in jail. I'm gonna restart this.